Okay, we're live.
Forgot the hammer.
Committee meeting of Monday, October 24th.
I
I
pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Ms. Walker? Ms. Cunningham?
Present.
Mr. Schrader?
Here.
Ms. Buchanan?
Present.
Ms. Weber is absent. We have quorum. I have none at the present time. If you want, Bianca, why don't you move the mic a little closer to you? There we go. Thank you.
And has everyone had a chance to review the previous meeting minutes for approval?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 19th meeting, charter review meeting.
Second?
I second it.
We'll go into,
Motion was made by Mr. Schrader, seconded by Ms. Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham? Mr. Schrader?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
So we'll go into the presentations. Town manager.
Thank you. Can I come to the podium if I actually face you all and stand a little easier to speak? So again, for the record, my name is Jacob Horowitz, and I am the special counsel for the town, and we work with your town attorney and have the opportunity of representing the Charter Review Board. I know you've been at this for quite some time, and if you'll indulge me, I know we have 3 substantive discussion items on tonight's agenda. The third item really speaks to the next steps of the Charter Review Board. And if I could take that item out of order, just to maybe talk about the path forward. And we have had an opportunity to speak to the town attorney a little bit. I know she's spoken to the town manager. And this is now the 3rd meeting that my office has had the opportunity to staff the Charter Review Board. I've been with you now twice. My law partner, Brian Sherman, was at the last meeting. And we've kind of taken some time to go back through all of your work over the past, I think, roughly a year. You all have been meeting for quite some time now. You've taken some action. You've really been quite deliberative in how you approached the town charter. And the town attorneys sort of brought us in to try to help move the ball forward and eventually over the goal line. Just procedurally, a couple things that I'd like to do and just kind of talk about how we would envision the process moving forward. The town of Pembroke Park is really in a pretty unique situation when it comes to its town charter. I was actually first retained by the town about 5 years ago to help with some Inspector General investigations that have been going on. All of those issues have since been resolved. But one of the things that the IG's office and the former town attorney and I had worked on quite a bit was recommending an update to the town charter. Our charter in Pembroke Park really has not been touched since roughly 1959. I think there may have been a couple changes, here or there, but very minimally. And a lot of the content, form, and substance of our town charter really, for lack of a better word, I would say is somewhat antiquated. Many, if not most, cities in Broward and Palm Beach County have moved away from some of the provisions that we still have in our charter. And this is not a negative comment against anybody. Our charter was adopted by the legislature, again, almost 70 years ago. We've operated functionally as a town since that time with the charter that's in place. But, you all are the first time, so far as I'm aware, that a charter review board has been convened in the town. And this really is an opportunity to bring the town kind of into the next century chapter, really to get our charter up to a current modern day working document, which might help better govern the town of Pembroke Park, both from a governance perspective as it relates to the town council and commission, but also from an operational perspective as it relates to your city manager and the day-to-day operations of the city. You all have already decided, and please, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. I know you've been at this a lot longer than I've been attending your meetings, but you've already decided to recommend moving to a commissioner-manager form of government. First, I would suggest that that's a good step in a very positive direction for the town. I think there are maybe 4 cities in Broward County that do not have a commissioner-manager form of government. We have 2 cities in Broward that have a strong mayor, Lighthouse Point and Plantation. And then we have 1 city which has a commission manager form of government, which is Pembroke Park. The town of Hillsborough Beach, incidentally, had a very similar charter to ours. About 6 years ago, they went from a commission manager form of government to a more traditional manager commission form of government. Here we have a structure where you have a clerk commissioner, for instance, where one commissioner sort of oversees the clerk's department, which again, it's a little bit antiquated. But what I would like to do, with your permission, is take all of the recommendations that you all have made over the course of the past 10 or 12 months and start putting pen to paper and bring you back with a new document at your next meeting, or depending on when that may be, which really would be a new charter for the town. Our sense and the thought that the town attorney and I had was that we would be essentially presenting to the voters a repeal and replace option, where what was presented would be an entirely new charter for the town. It would have a new governance structure, a new operational structure. It would address all of the substantive issues that we would typically see in a town charter, which are not included within ours. For instance, at the last meeting, I know you spoke to vacancies and the process for filling vacancies on the city commission. Previous to that, I think we'd spoken about, the manager and whether we would have a commission manager form of government, whether we would have the commission elected, from within districts or at large, whether we would have the mayor elected from among the commission or by the voters. These are all topics that you've previously addressed, and what I would like to do, with your permission, is to start putting pen to paper with all of those different concepts and bring you back a complete document, which you can then look at and so kind of have a sense for what the town charter might ultimately look like at some future moment. From a timing perspective, we know that an amended charter will need to go to the voters for approval. We have an election in March of 2024. Excuse me, in March 2023. We have an election this coming March. We don't have another election in the town until March of 27. It's not reasonable, practical, or realistic to think that a town charter amendment of this magnitude is going to make the ballot in March. The supervisor of elections, they need all of the ballot language, the question, a ballot title, by January 3rd, which is the first day of qualifying. Once you all have vetted and approved and recommended a final product, it goes to the town council. That then requires 2 readings of an ordinance. There's simply not enough meetings, not enough time in the year in order to get this before the town council to make the March ballot. The other thing that we talked about a little bit with the town attorney.
What are they going to do then?
Well, hear me out. I'm getting to that. I'm getting there. The other thing that the town attorney and I really kind of thought warranted some consideration was, right now we have a town council of 3 members. We have 2 elected members and 1 appointed member. Come March, we will have a 5-member elected town council. And
Commissioners.
Commissioners. And our thought was, once there is a fully elected commission, let that commission, who's, again, at that point been elected by the people of the town, really have an opportunity to dig into the substance of the charter that you all are going to be recommending, be that at a workshop or a series of workshops. Again, this is a significant charter document, and this is the constitution of the town that's going to govern how we run and operate, for the foreseeable future. So our thought was to wait until we have an elected commission in March, at some point, mid-2023, start to present your recommendations to them, and then work to an election in some point in 2024. We always have the option of calling a special election. One of the things that we have not addressed that I would like to address at some point during the charter review process is the concept of staggered terms. Right now, for instance, and again, this is a little antiquated, right now you have all 5 members of your commission elected every March to a 4-year term, or every 4 years. So in March of 2023, you're going to have 5 new members elected to the commission. What most municipalities, most governing bodies that have elected officials serve on, what they have are what are referred to as staggered terms. So you don't have a full turnover of the commission at every election. So in other words, you may have 3 members of the commission elected in March of 23, and then you would have 2 members elected in March of 25. And you would have a rotation where everybody would still be serving a 4-year term, but they would be staggered terms. So you would have 2 members turning over every 4 years and 3 members turning over every 4 years, and there'd be elections in the city every 2 years, if that makes sense. And that's how most cities are operating, so you don't have the risk of an entirely new commission every 4 years. What that does require, if you move to a process like that, it requires a transition. So at some point in time, and again, we're now thinking down the road to implement the transition, at some point, there's going to be elected officials who are elected to a 6-year term. Be that 2 or 3 members, because in order to stagger those 2 years, somebody's term has to be extended. That's the way that it always works under Florida law. We saw this a lot when a lot of cities went from March to November elections. We haven't made that change, and that may be another thing you want to consider. But when cities went from March to November elections, everybody who was in office at the time had their terms extended by 8 months. When you move from a 5 positions elected on the same cycle to 3 elected on one cycle and 2 elected 2 years later, just to provide for that staggering, again, it requires a transition schedule. So those are just some of the other concepts that we were thinking about trying to implement. Again, ultimately, what you all want to recommend is entirely up to the 4 or 5 of you, and then it's up to the commission as to what will ultimately be presented on the ballot. But I wanted to just kind of lay a little framework and roadmap as to how the town attorney and I sort of envisioned the process moving forward. Again, part of the constraint is the fact that we don't have elections in the town, with the exception of March of 2023. Our next election isn't until March of 2027. Right? Now, there are elections in August, as the clerk reminded me, and November of 24. They're not town elections, but they are countywide elections or statewide elections. So there is ballot access. So we're not necessarily waiting another 4 years before the voters will consider your work product, but it may take a little bit of time just to get through next year in order to get a final product to the voters. So again, just from a process standpoint, I wanted to kind of lay that framework and give you some sense as to how I envisioned, the town attorney envisioned, your work product. You all have been at this for a long time. At some point, I know that fatigue sets in, and you want to just kind of get a product delivered to the commission. We want to help you get there, but I think if we had to have the opportunity to put pen to paper, take all of the action that you've taken thus far, and codify that in one document that you could then look at, and over the course of a meeting or 2 meetings, we could kind of walk through together until you get a product you're comfortable with and something we can ultimately present to the commission. And then once we've got a full commission come, April or May of next year, we'd have either a joint workshop or some kind of formal presentation where you all would be able to present your findings to the commission that they could then review and consider which, in what form or in what substance it would be presented to the voters. So procedurally, that was sort of how we envisioned moving forward. I don't know if you have any comments, thoughts, concerns. I mean, again, we're really here to help you. So, I want to make sure that you feel like you've had some, buy-in in the process. Do you have any concerns about anything I just said? Please, let
But
me know.
meanwhile, the town can continue to run until it's not going to affect the.
It will not. Correct. The town will continue to operate. And again, we're sort of seeing this as a long-term planning, issue. I mean, we've got this charter that's in place now. It's been in place for 70 years. Is it perfect? I think we know that it is imperfect. We know that there are improvements that are needed. We know that some of the language in our charter is antiquated. But again, it has served the town well. And now it's time to kind of put together a new document that'll move us into that next phase of our existence, so to speak. But that was sort of how we envisioned the process. And again, if you have any concerns or questions or comments, whether it's now or at some meeting over the next 2 or 3 months, please, this is we're really here to help you. This is your process, so we don't want to feel like we're imposing anything on you. I want to make sure you've got some buy-in as to how we collectively consider moving forward.
How
That
does having the new town police department affect any of
It
this?
does not.
Nothing?
Not at all.
There's
No.
nothing we need to talk about
Not at-
there, or
Not at all.
add to the charter, or nothing?
Not at all. Nope. Nothing at all.
We need
Where's,
you
who
to talk
located?
into the mic, please.
The police
The
department.
third floor. I think, I mean, you know, Marlon, you'll know. Is that right? I just sort of overheard that.
Soon go down to the first floor, right?
Yes. They're completely up and running on the third floor. And then there's gonna be a build-out that's gonna take place on the old building department side, which is on the north end of the building, the northwest end of the building. And at that point, they're gonna come all down, and then the building department is redoing the third floor. So the third floor is divided in half, right? So here right now, which is on the south side, is the police department. On the north side is another set of offices, so on and so forth. That's going to turn into the building department. So when they come downstairs, then the building department stays upstairs, and the police will be on the first floor.
How big's the force?
I'm sorry?
How big is the police force? 6, 7 people?
Oh, no,
No, it could
no.
never be that small amount.
I mean, that's what they started with, right?
No.
I mean, from the news
no.
that,
I think we had like 7, I think we have at least 15 officers.
I think when they started, when you seen it on the TV, they said we have 6 officers ready to go. Started on the TV.
Yeah. No, we did a swearing in. And there's, I believe, I believe it's more than 15 officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, question. So far, what we recommended, you said it's not set in stone, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Which we'll talk about as we,
Correct. And what Melissa did was she provided us with a copy of all of your prior minutes. We've gone through them. What I'd like to do is take all of the prior discussions, recommendations, talk about commission manager, form of government, all the vacancies, all the things you've talked about thus far, and start to incorporate them, add the appropriate legalese, so to speak, format all of those substantive issues in the form of a charter. It's going to look completely different than what you all may currently know as your charter. Again, we're taking your comments, your recommendations, but there are certain things, financial procedures, qualifications of the city manager, the process for appointing an acting city manager. I mean, they're just, charters can get into the weeds in many ways. So we'd like to be able to bring you a proposed charter that you can then go through, which includes all of your recommendations, along with some of the other, I don't want to call it boilerplate, but the more common things you would see in a charter to make sure that you're comfortable with those types of things. Again, there's not a right or wrong way to run a city, so to speak. I know we talked about some of these things in the past, but for instance, your recommendation previously has been for the town manager and the town attorney to be the 2 direct reports to the town commission. I'm sorry, I think the clerk too. Was that right, Marlon? Was it also the clerk or no?
Yes,
So
for the
for the direct reports, the charter officers.
charter officers, the 3 of them.
So there would be 3 charter officers: a clerk, town attorney, and a town manager. And that's perfectly acceptable. It's common. The city of North Lauderdale has the exact same model. Many cities only have 2. Many cities only have the manager and the attorney. Some cities have the finance director. Some cities have the auditor. Right? So again, these are really policy decisions for you all to recommend and for the commission to ultimately consider and put before the voters. What we will bring to you is a charter that suggests that the attorney, the manager, and the clerk would be those 3 charter officers, because that's what you've previously discussed. If once you see that, pen on paper and see how that would look, you decide that you want to add an internal auditor, or you want to add a deputy clerk, and those are things you always have the option to add. Nothing that you've done previously, as I said, would be set in stone. We would just take your prior action, use that action to put pen to paper and bring you back a charter consistent with those prior discussions. We would go over that charter during the course of, maybe 2 meetings, maybe 3 if you needed. I mean, we would want to be deliberate without, burning anybody out over the course of a long meeting. And then at the end of that process, we would ask for a motion to adopt that final work product, which we could then transmit and recommend to the city commission or town commission. Does that make sense?
I have another question.
Please.
We have, like, the recommendation was for commissioner manager.
Yes.
But my question is, how well do the commissioner and the manager work together? What are their responsibilities? I think
Well, and that's perfect, because that
Very
actually,
important,
if you look at 6.1 on tonight's agenda, one of the 2 substantive items I did want to speak to you about this evening was the city manager. And what is, or the town manager, what is that person's job? We know generally under a manager-commission form of government, the town manager runs the day-to-day operations of the city. We would have 3 direct reports to the commission. Every other city employee would be an employee of the town manager. So what does that mean? One thing our charter does not have today, which is probably the most glaring omission in my opinion, is what's referred to as a non-interference provision, which really delineates the role and the authority of the manager as the chief executive officer of the town from the commission as the legislative body, as the policymakers. So what does that mean? You've got a non-interference provision that will say something along the lines of, with the exception of inquiry and investigation, the elected officials shall deal with staff only through the city manager, and that they shall not provide any direction to any member of staff. So what does that do? That tells your staff that they work for the manager, and that if the commissioner or the vice mayor or somebody on the commission were to go to the code officer and say, there's code violations at this house, I want you to go and inspect it, the code officer doesn't work for the elected official.
That's what we have right now?
It is not what you have right now.
Oh,
It is not what, right now, there's no delineation between the commission and staff. There's no boundary. All right. So we would suggest establishing a boundary. So your staff knows who they report to. They report to the city manager. Your commission knows if I have an issue, if I want something done, I go to the manager. If I'm unhappy with the way that the planning department is doing their job, if I'm unhappy with the way the finance department is doing their job, my recourse is through the manager. The manager works for me. The staff does not work for me.
so who does the manager works under?
The manager works for the commission, the majority of the commission. And I can tell you, and for instance, I'm the city attorney for Cooper City. Right? I have 5 elected officials who I report to. I will not take direction from any one of those elected officials. So if the mayor, who represents 20% of the commission, comes to me and says, I'd like an ordinance drafted for the next agenda to regulate, side yard setbacks so people can have more room for swimming pools. My answer to the mayor is going to be, Mayor, I respect the question. Put an item on the agenda to get direction to the city attorney to draft that ordinance. Because I won't spend legal time drafting at the request of one member of the commission. Because I work for a majority of 3 of them. I represent the body. But I take direction from a majority of them. And it's the same for the manager. So the manager knows if one commissioner, or the mayor, who again has the same authority as any 20% of the commission, say his vote carries the same weight. If the mayor asks the manager to do something, again, depending on what it is, the manager's going to have some discretion. But for the most part, the manager's going to want direction from the commission. Right? It's the commission who acts as a body. It's not any one member of the commission that can provide direction to the manager. It's not any one member of the commission that can provide direction to the attorney. That's the process of serving on a collegial body. So what does that do? Well, a couple things. Because we have the sunshine law in Florida, inevitably that is going to frustrate some residents. It's going to slow things down because you only meet once a month. Some cities meet twice a month. But the only time things can get done is at those public meetings. So if there's an issue that needs to be considered, you may not have a meeting for 3 weeks. and the manager may need some direction. So depending on the time sensitivity and whatever that issue is, you may need to call a special meeting just to get some consensus or some direction so the manager can do something. Doesn't always happen, and again, those are probably the extreme situations, but ultimately you're going to want some delineation, some separation between the policymakers and the people who do the day-to-day work. Right? It gives a certain level of comfort for your staff, knowing that they work for the manager. It gives the manager a better sense because he knows that the commission isn't going to be providing direction to his staff. Right? It creates a more cohesive and organized operational structure. So non-interference, which is not currently included in our charter, is one thing that we would recommend including in a proposed charter, which really kind of codifies that manager-commission form of government and establishes the role and responsibility of each. I mean, the commission ultimately are the policymakers. Right? The 5 members of the commission, you all set the direction for the town. I have a great, again, it's a little anecdotal. Years and years ago, I had a newly elected commissioner elected in one of our cities we represent, and he had some frictional moments with the manager. And his response to the manager, this is not in a private meeting, not in a public meeting, but his comment was, if the commission tells you to shut off the water plant and pave the roads gold, that's what you're supposed to do. And technically he was right, because it's not the manager's job is to follow the policy set by the commission. Right? Unless it's unlawful or immoral or you have some other objection to it, but generally speaking, 3 members of the commission vote on an issue, the manager's job is to implement that policy. Right? So what we would do in a charter is, and this kind of gets into item 6.1 on the agenda, we would go into the manager's role and responsibility, the manager's qualifications. Some cities require a manager to have a master's degree. Some cities require 4 years plus certain years of experience as a department head. Some cities require that a manager have some number of years as an assistant city manager. So those are the types of qualifications, the types of things that what I would suggest is we will present some ideas to you. And if you look in the backup for tonight's meeting, there are 3 different charter provisions that speak to city manager, role and responsibility. I'm not necessarily looking for any direction tonight, but I would like you to go through those provisions and just kind of get a sense for what it could look like. And start thinking about what are the qualifications you might want your manager to have. Because what I will do, again, at your next meeting or shortly thereafter, is present a document to you. Not a recommendation, but it's a starting point. Right? You will not have covered everything in that document. The topics that you have covered, we will do our best to incorporate your prior direction and your prior action so it is as close to something you are familiar with and comfortable with as we can put together. But there are going to be some provisions, again, much like the city manager provisions, where I'm going to have to take a guess. Because again, you can't possibly have weighed in on every one of these little issues. And some things you may just not want in the charter. Again, there's value to silence at times. But when it comes to qualifications or the process of appointing an acting city manager, some cities it requires a 4/5 vote to hire or fire the city manager, or a 4/5 vote to hire or fire the city attorney. Some cities it requires 3/5. Again, those are policy questions. There's good arguments on both sides of those issues.
So our city manager is hired by the commission
Correct.
and fired by the commission?
That's correct. But what your charter does not do is outline the duties and responsibilities of the manager. So, and I feel for your manager, because having somewhere to go, which lays out what your job is. City manager is a very, very broad responsibility. You are the CEO, essentially, of the city. But again, no 2 CEOs run their city the same way, or their business the same way. And I can tell you, we represent about a dozen cities in Broward and Palm Beach County. No 2 cities run the same. No 2 cultures are the same. The law is the same, Their codes may be different, but the statutes are the same, state law is the same. But the way that they operate and the way they navigate a culture that works for them, again, we need to find what will work for Pembroke Park. We've got a starting point, but we've got a long way to go to get a system in place that will really sustain the town moving forward. Because these are the kinds of things we don't want to have to think about, right? And they should be in our charter. Anybody should know where to look, go to the charter, see what it takes to become the city manager. See what it takes for the manager to appoint an acting city manager. There shouldn't be a lot of guesswork in a lot of these things. It should just be codified. And this is essentially the city's constitution. And ours hasn't been touched in about 70 years. So that's sort of why we're trying to be a little deliberate and kind of work through some of these various issues. But again, in the backup, you'll see there's sample charter provisions that talk about hiring and firing and suspending the city manager. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the backup. If there are things that you like or things you don't like and you want to weigh in now, I'm all ears.
Now, do we already have that in our book?
We do not. No, these are samples I pulled from other cities
Okay.
that we represent. And again, just to give you, I'm not recommending any of
Now,
them.
are we going to be reviewing them on the thing, or are we going to get a?
You have them. They should be in your backup. You should have all of these things. No?
I didn't run copies for them, no.
No. Okay.
No,
But I'm
they
saying,
have,
I have an extra copy. I have one extra copy.
Well, I meant, we.
I mean, I have them they're, everything that you gave me has been uploaded to the system.
Okay.
So if they had a computer in front of them, they could all view it through the system. Do you guys want me to get you a notebook? An iPad? Or do you want copies of this? I would go upstairs and run you some copies.
I mean, again,
I'd rather read it from this than a computer.
well, and again, I tried to include it all in the backup, thinking you might want to look at it in advance of tonight. I don't know
Yeah.
if you had the chance or not. What I can do, and I don't want to start having discussions on stuff you haven't looked at. I mean, what I'd rather do is let you go back and look at these things, kind of digest, see what you like, see what you don't like, right? And when we come back, we will put something together, something to hopefully to start a discussion. And we can go through it, section by section, line by line. We like this, we don't like this. We think this should be 4 years instead of 3 years. I mean, the kind of, the little things, again, for lack of a better word, we can work through together once you've got a product, a document. And then we could do that over the course of a couple meetings until we get to a final product that you, at least a majority of you, are comfortable recommending. So again, the two substantive issues that I kind of offered for discussion this evening, one is about the manager, the role, responsibility, duties of the manager. And again, that's all kind of contained back there. The other one, which I really feel is particularly important, given the fact that you all are meeting and have met, is the Charter Review Board. Currently, our charter does not mention or address or contemplate a periodic review of the charter. To your credit and to the town's credit, you all are sitting here this evening, and at least this process is underway. At some moment, we will have a new charter for the town of Pembroke Park. But even that new charter will be an imperfect charter. So periodically, whether it is every 4 years, which I would suggest is probably too frequent, every 6 years, or every 10 years, a group such as you should convene, should review the charter, and should make recommendations. Now, there may be times when, after going through that exercise, there's nothing to change, there's nothing to recommend. But some body, I mean a body as in a collective, some group of town residents on a periodic basis should be impaneled to review the town charter, to review and consider any updates to the law since the last time it was reviewed, any updates just to the operational side of the town, things that you may want to recommend in the future to make the town a more efficient place to work, live, play, all those good things we come to expect of the place we live in. Broward County, for instance, they have a charter review commission that meets every 10 years, and they meet for 2 years every 10 years. Some cities, I'd say, well, most cities that I can think of usually review their charters every 6, 8, or 10 years. There are a few that still do it every 4 years. I think Tamarack still reviews their charter every 4 years. That's probably a little too frequent, in my opinion. I mean, how much really is there to change? And sometimes you find if people are meeting more frequently, they're recommending changes for the sake of change, not necessarily things that really need to be changed. But, you know, a body is convened. They feel like they want to do something just to feel like they are actually doing something, part of the process. But again, there are plenty of times where I've sat on these boards as legal counsel, and after 6 or 8 months of meeting, the answer is there's nothing to recommend. We have nothing to change. You know, Cooper City, again, where I sat as city attorney, they had 11 items on the ballot in 2020. So again, they went through the charter review process, and their charter review board, I think, recommended 10 or 11 different amendments, and 9 of those 11 passed. Again, it's a living document. A charter really is a work in progress, but it is ultimately the Constitution that governs how the town will operate, and it provides the guidance and direction not only to your commission, but also to the professional staff. So having some delineation of the roles, having some clear articulation of who does what and how and when and why, it enables everybody's life to run a little easier. So again, that's
Now, these here are,
these are sample provisions from
From
other
other-
charters. I believe it is Pembroke Pines, North Lauderdale, and Cooper City. There are 31 cities in Broward County. I could have picked from any of them. Again, I'm not recommending any of those provisions, but I simply want
this
you
is
all to
like
see.
a guide.
I just want you to see how it can be done, how other cities, how neighboring cities are looking at these issues, how big cities are looking at these issues, how small cities are looking at these issues. So I just wanted to give you all something to think about. Again,
Now, how do we know if these differ from the way they're doing the town now?
I can tell you that they do. Every one of those sample provisions is different from the way the town currently operates.
Got it.
I mean, right now, let me see. I'm not even sure your charter references a town manager.
Who is our town manager?
Your town manager is J.C. Bermudez, is that right?
No, J.C. Jimenez.
Jimenez, close.
Bermudez is Doral.
Doral.
And he's the mayor there.
Mayor.
We had some
I just-
presentations,
close.
I don't remember who
I think
was
he
who.
came in, I think we.
He was one of the first ones that came in. I do want
Oh, I
to
think I
mention
remember now,
something
yeah.
that Mr. Horowitz was saying. When you talk about the city manager, all of them are appointed by the commission and fired by the commission. So it's not that the public is able to appoint a city manager. Okay, just wanted to make sure, because
Yeah,
when
I
he was
asked him.
when he mentioned that about when we were looking at that section, I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
he said that
Okay.
the commissioners are the ones that fire and hire.
Who answers, because sometimes it's confusing to me. Who answers to the manager? Who answers to the manager?
Everybody else.
Everybody else answers to
Everybody
except
else, with the exception of
the
the
commissioners.
clerk, the attorney, the attorney and the manager. Because you don't currently answer to the commission, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
You do. So it'd be the clerk, the manager, and the attorney. Everybody else reports to the manager.
They're supposed to.
Okay, come again?
Okay, so under you're talking about what's currently, you're talking about what is
Oh,
recommended?
currently, or what it's supposed to be?
What is supposed, okay, perfect. So what you have recommended is a commission manager form of government, which is the overwhelmingly more popular governmental form in the state of Florida and throughout the United States, where you have a professional city manager, and there are professional organizations. There's something called the ICMA, it's the International City Manager Association. There's also the BCCMA, the Broward County Manager Association, and the FCMA, the Florida City Managers Association, but they're national and international organizations that have codes of ethics, they provide training, and they essentially regulate and help facilitate people who are serving in administrative positions in municipalities. So you have a professional.
Manager is supposed to be a part of.
That each manager is supposed, not every manager is, but is a resource for managers. Every manager that I'm aware of is a part of the ICMA. I don't know if JC is. I assume that he is.
He is.
Yeah. I mean, again, it is uncommon for a manager not to be part of the ICMA, but it's a professional association, right? So, I mean, you have people who go to school and build their careers about being public employees. These are department heads. These are utility directors. These are city engineers. These are public works directors. So each, and I don't have a copy of the town's organizational structure, but the way I would envision it is the top of the structure, you'd have the residents of Pembroke Park. If you look at an organizational structure. Then you would have the commission. Below the commission, it would break into three branches. You'd have the manager, the attorney, and the clerk. And then below the manager, you'd have everybody else. All the department heads. And
Commissioners
then
and-
below the department heads, there would be a breakdown within each department.
Where does the commissioners fall?
The commissioners report to the voters of Pembroke Park. So, here, again.
Trying to see if
I could-
oh, here's the organizational
Do you have
chart.
an org chart? Oh, here we go, perfect.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was trying to find it.
Commissioners at top.
So here, so here, I would say it should start even one higher. Here you have the mayor and 4 commissioners. In my opinion, this should start up here with the voters. Right? So really, it's the
Start
people
from
of
up
Pembroke
there,
Park
in my
elect
opinion.
these 5 individuals. These 5 individuals hire, now it only says 2, but well, then you told me it's 3. So you've got the manager and the town attorney. Nobody reports to the town attorney. I think you've got a paralegal now, but nobody reports to the town attorney. Everybody else flows from the town manager. Now, I mentioned that non-interference provision. The non-interference provision will tell these 5 people that they cannot provide direction to any of these people. And these people cannot take direction from these people. So if these people have an issue with this person, or if these people have an issue with this person, they go to the town manager. Everything flows to the town manager, who is the chief executive of the town. Right? And if they have a problem with the manager, get rid of the manager. Right? That's where the buck stops.
So basically, everybody's supposed to answer to the manager. But that doesn't mean that if something happened, they cannot let him go or fire him or whatever. That's what you're saying?
The commission.
Commissioners.
Commission. Okay.
The manager's got a boss too. He's got 5 of them.
Everybody have a boss.
Right? That's
Yeah.
right. But the mayor does too, and the commission does too. You all. Right? I mean, you all are the voters of Pembroke Park.
We don't vote
We
for
don't,
mayor.
listen, I don't think, you
Yeah,
said
right.
we're above,
We don't
top
vote
of
for
the
mayor.
ladder. I don't think we are.
Okay, so if you look at that first line, it says Public Services Director, Town Planner, Chief Building Official, IT Director, Finance Director, Administrative Services Director, Deputy Town Clerk, Police Chief. That's because all of those positions are in our ordinance. It's not in the charter, they're in the ordinance. And
understand.
the commission goes ahead and basically appoints them.
Your commission appoints all these people?
Correct.
See, and
It's in our ordinance.
that ordinance can always be changed by the commission.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
But, the way I would envision it, the way I would recommend it, is all of these people should be hired and fired and report to the town manager. Some places, Cooper City, again, where I serve as city attorney included, require the commission to approve all department heads and assistant department heads. I wouldn't recommend it. In fact, in 2020, the Charter Review Board recommended changing it. And I mentioned there were 2 items that failed at the ballot. That was one of them. That item, but the commission proposed changing it, and the Charter Review Board proposed changing it, but the voters of Cooper City thought otherwise. So in Cooper City, all these people report to the manager, but the manager cannot hire them or let them go without commission approval. So very
I can't fire them because of.
And the concerns that you're got going on in your head right now, they're real concerns. I mean, those issues are issues that they live with in that town.
Backwards, I have an employee that I can't do anything with. And you, a commissioner, that employee don't work with you, but you have. Oh,
It's
And
great.
I say, no two cities are the same. I mean, these are the
I don't know,
kinds of
it's-
issues that, again, are unique to different places.
wow.
So I wouldn't suggest that, and what I
Very
bring
hard
to you
to
to
know
look at
who's
is
the
not
boss
going to
around you.
include
It's
that.
so
But
confusing.
I'm not gonna suggest it doesn't exist, because it does. You know, for instance, in Tamarack, and again, this is just anecdotal, probably 10 years ago, where we used to serve as city attorney, they had a situation where their building official, their clerk, and the building official and the clerk were reported to the manager, but only those two positions required commission approval. No other department director had to be approved by the commission except the clerk and the building official. So they proposed an amendment to their charter to make those two department heads like every other department head. A direct report to the manager, no oversight from the commission. And that was put on the ballot, it passed, charter was amended, and that's no longer the process in Tamarack. Now all department directors in Tamarack report to the manager. Again, the city attorney and the manager report to the commission. So there's no, again, it's not a right or wrong, it's just what works for the town, what are the 5 of you, 4 of you comfortable recommending. But
Common sense.
it's easier said than done. So again, those, you know, and I kind of touched on it briefly, the role of the manager, the responsibilities, the qualifications, the process for appointing an acting manager. That's one of the substantive things I wanted to at least lay on the table tonight. The other is charter review. You know, one thing to consider, which is a very unique in municipal charters when it comes to amending charters, and I'll use Broward County again as an example. Broward County, their charter review board has what's referred to as direct ballot access. So in Broward County, every 10 years, they have a 21-member commission, charter review commission, appointed by the county commission. That commission has direct access to the voters. So the commission, that board, meets, they meet for 2 years, they make recommendations. The county commission, under the county charter, has a ministerial function of putting those items on the ballot. County commission can't change those items. So if the Charter Review Commission says we want to have a strong mayor of Broward County, elected countywide, Broward County Commission has no choice but to put that on the ballot. And in 2016 and 2018, that was the most discussed and debated and contentious issue. It ultimately takes 11 members of the Charter Review Board to recommend an item to get it on the ballot. They only had 9 that support it, and it was not presented on the ballot at that time. But again, in most places, including Pembroke Park, although it is not codified, what our Charter Review Board will do is make a recommendation to the commission. Ultimately, it's the commission that will decide what goes on the ballot and what doesn't go on the ballot. That was why Melissa, your town attorney, and I really thought there was value to waiting until March and having a 5-member elected commission, giving them the ability to have some say in this process. Because again, this is going to affect them, it's going to affect you, it's going to affect to some extent everybody in the town. So better from our perspective to be deliberate and let that newly elected body have some stake in the town charter. And that was from a timing perspective why we kind of thought about the time frame that I described earlier.
So if they decide that they don't like something we came up with and they deny it, where does it go from there? Back to us?
Well, the answer is it depends. They can do a couple things. You're going to present them a complete charter. They can review it. They can say, we like 90% of it, but we don't like the provision that you put in there about the qualifications of the manager. They can ask you to go back and revisit that issue and come back to them with a new recommendation on that specific, provision. they can make a change from the dais. I mean, once you make that recommendation, they then control the document. So they can do essentially whatever they want with it. I'm sorry? Well, it's a legal reality. But again, that's ultimately why we wanted to have something as complete that we can present to you and something that you all were comfortable with presenting to them. And I do envision it's going to take probably a meeting or two to really walk the commission through the charter. And they may ask, why are you recommending having no districts instead of having districts? Or why are you recommending having a mayor elected at large as opposed to having a mayor elected from the commission? I'm not going to be able to answer those questions, right? So at some point, it's going to take the policymakers, who in this context are you all, why is what you are recommending a better option for Pembroke Park? Part of it is going to be because our current process really is just antiquated. I mean, look at the OIG reports from a couple years ago. I mean, if you look at the reports from the Inspector General's office, some of the issues they identified really are charter issues. They're just, it's because we don't have the tools in our charter that give your staff the direction and the guidance that they need. And not having that definition has lent itself to some of the challenges. But by having some of these things come together and having a more workable and complete document, our hope is it will give you a better, a better framework to move forward.
So we present it to the commission, and then, like you said, we work out some details or a couple of things they don't like, and then we finally, then it goes to the
I can't promise you the timing.
Yeah,
The
no, but
answer
I
is
meant,
yes. Then it goes
after
to
the
vote.
commission, then where does it go?
It requires an ordinance. They'll have to adopt an ordinance, which takes 2 readings. One of those readings is a public hearing. So they'll go through the process, which I know because we meet once a month, it'll take 2 months or so to adopt an ordinance. Then it goes to the next available ballot, and that takes coordination with the Supervisor of Elections office. But remember, the ordinance that the commission adopts, it's going to have the ballot language. It's going to have a ballot title. When you all go vote on November 8th, you're going to see in
Yeah,
that
we're not gonna be looking at
You're not
all
gonna-
this stuff, we're gonna be looking at,
75 words.
how many?
75 words. Every item on the ballot has a title, which is limited to 15 words, and a question, which is limited to 75 words. And that's true
And
for
either a yes or a no
and a
answer.
yes. They're all yes or no
I
questions.
just filled out my ballot.
That's right.
Yes,
And they were all written by lawyers, and they are.
all written to confuse you.
Mail.
And
I always do mail.
yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you.
Yeah, they were all written to confuse you.
And now, and here's where it gets particularly difficult, because we're going to present an entire new charter, right? So you're going to walk into a voting booth at some point in the next couple of years and ask whether the current town charter should be repealed and replaced with ordinance number, whatever the ordinance is.
They're gonna be like, what is that?
Yeah, well, I would be like that too. How do you know what you're voting on? So part of that comes down to education, because remember, under state law, the town cannot advocate in support of a charter amendment or in opposition to a charter amendment. You can't spend public money to advocate or oppose a referendum. Now, you can spend money to educate. So part of this process may be an education campaign so that the voters know what, in fact, they're being asked to consider. But it becomes very challenging, particularly when you're doing a repeal and re-adopt, to present a charter to a voter when all you have is 75 words.
So what would those 75 words be? Condense it into.
It could, well, I'll do you one better. And I can only say this because the city of Plantation is currently going through a similar exercise, although not in quite the same detail. They have a item on their ballot now, and my mother, who's a Plantation resident, early voted. She sent me a picture of her ballot on this one particular question. I'm going to read you their charter amendment question. So what it says, and this is for the city of Plantation.
So this is what people will vote on.
This is what, if you were a Plantation resident and you were going to vote on November 8th, this is the question you would be asked. The title, Adoption of a New City Charter to replace the existing 1953 city charter. So our title, and again, not verbatim, will say something along the lines of adoption of a new city charter to replace the existing 1959 city charter. We're about 6 years younger than Plantation.
59?
So here's the question, if you're a voter on Plantation right now. Shall the proposed 2022 city charter as set forth in ordinance number 2613 be adopted to replace the existing city charter? What are you voting on? I have no idea.
Some people
what-
just vote because they see the year. They're gonna be like 1950. Are you kidding me? We in 20.
Yeah, that's kind of very,
Well, and remember, Plantation has a strong mayor form of government. What if they're voting to go to a commission manager form of government? I don't know, they could be,
wow, that is very,
but that's,
I mean, I
that,
can
Because
understand you
you're
can't
voting
put
to
all this
change it,
on,
but
but
you don't know. You don't know what's in it.
and it forces the average voter to be educated far beyond the average voter is ever going to be educated. Because you don't know what,
Don't know what's in
what's
it.
in that ordinance, what's in that charter. You know, you don't
so
know.
who can vote on this particular town, the one we're doing?
Any elector in the town of Pembroke Park, any registered
Resident.
voter in the town of Pembroke Park.
But it has to be in the
Have
town
to
of
be a
Pembroke.
yeah.
registered voter in Pembroke Park. Correct.
Which should be held down the street here.
Wherever,
Right, yeah.
wherever you have your polling
Well,
places.
well,
Yeah,
some
yeah,
of
I
us
mean,
are here.
Yeah, wherever you have your precincts and polling places.
Did they change it, if I'm not mistaken?
No,
I
I'm
don't
still
know.
here.
No, there's two precincts. There's the one at the park and
Park
there's
and
this one
one here.
here. So
Which I
it's
never
like
understood that.
Q50 and
Why-
Q51.
Why the one at the park? Who?
Well, maybe when you have a full body of people
don't get
voting,
that.
I think you need both.
The people. The city is split up between here and the park.
Correct,
According to where you live, you go over to the park.
correct. Now remember, that's the supervisor of election who designates where your precinct is. It has nothing to do with us here.
My God. So they
know.
designate two voting across the street from each other.
The city has no control over that.
I
No.
know, but
Yeah.
that's so crazy.
So I was just gonna ask you the November
Except that I
8th.
have to be here at 5 in the morning. I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask you about November 8th. You can vote over
Good-
here?
Oh, at the
You
precinct.
have to vote what's on
November-
your card. Your
November
area is on
8th.
your card.
November 8th, this area here will be open, and across at the park will also be open for voters. So if your card says here, this is where you come, if not, you go over there.
So does the card stipulate?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yes.
I always do mail-in ballots, so
Yeah,
Oh,
I,
no, no.
I got my
Your
card, but I guess I
Card,
don't
see, the
take.
card gives an exact, because I just looked at my card.
Yeah,
It gives an exact address where
It
you have to
doesn't matter
go.
if you do
Which is
absentee
where?
ballot, they
I have
always
to come
give
here.
you a precinct, that's it.
So the park
And
is
it
right there.
says Town of Pembroke Park.
It says exactly
town
the address and
office.
everything where you're supposed to go vote. Cards and sending card waste of money. They send duplicate cards.
And all the stuff having to do with the election, I've already uploaded it to the system as well.
These?
No, okay,
No.
so I did want to mention something about this. On Friday, Susie went ahead and sent you all an email with a link.
I couldn't open it. I tried to open it. It's like so much commercial and cookie this and cookie that. I couldn't.
Probably because it was so large. It depends on
I
your.
don't know. Maybe my phone.
It's
I couldn't
straight
open
from, it's straight from the town.
it. I
It's
know.
straight from here, from the town's website.
But when I open it, all this stuff is popping up, and I couldn't get rid of it. I couldn't get to the
Okay,
agenda,
well-
which I used to get before. This time I couldn't get to it.
Okay, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because at every meeting, you should be receiving that email that tells you what the agenda is and each and every one of the backups, so that then when you come to the meetings, you have already this information. Otherwise, when you get here, if we give you a packet of 10 pages each, then at that time, you're not gonna have time to read it and go through it and all that. So you should be utilizing this
I
system.
guess I'm so
I
used to it
understand
being
that.
here when we get here.
No, they always
that
send it. That I
like it
know.
that way better, but that's fine.
So.
But I always can get to open it. But this time I couldn't.
Can?
I just want you to be aware of next time so that you've got it ahead of time, not waiting to get here to get any documents, is all I'm saying. So, you do have it available to you before you ever get here.
Yeah, it's better, even though I don't know if I have the time, which is good if we could go through it before we get here. It's better. I understand that. But I just couldn't open it.
Did you want to talk about the next meetings?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
whatever you like.
what I wanted to bring to your attention is the next meeting is scheduled for, the last we spoke, we scheduled it for Monday, December 5. And it was because we were going to do it on the 5th because in November, it falls into Thanksgiving, either before Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving, but it was going to be an issue. So we moved it to the 5th. The only thing is that I'm going to have work done in the chambers to be able to change out our audio system, and it's not going to be available. So I had spoken to our attorney to ask, would it be okay if we just reconvened in January? Because at that time, he'll have a brand-new charter, and then November and December, you guys can be off so that then it doesn't interfere with holidays, whatever you're doing. So I was gonna see
Yeah, I
what,
think it's okay as long as now that we know we're not gonna make this 2020
Yeah,
election, so.
Better for me too.
It's,
So
again,
basically,
March is
this would
just-
be the last meeting
Till
till
January.
January.
till January.
And what I will do over the next 6 or 8 weeks is really start, putting together a charter for you all based on your prior action, based on your prior recommendation, based on, this and previous discussions. I will hopefully get that to you in advance of the next meeting by, a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, so you can start to go through it. And then when we meet in January, I could kind of walk you through what we're presenting. I mean, I envision it will take us probably 2 meetings, if not 3, to get through that charter. And, get to a point where you're comfortable making a recommendation, knowing that we probably won't present to the commission till, again, April, May, sometime by mid-year of next year.
So I'll go back and see if I can print these out.
No, because I mean, we're not gonna see you again, so why not give it to her, for her to?
No, these are his.
You can,
No,
you can keep
she's
it.
gonna make you
Yeah,
a
keep
copy.
it. Do you all have my email address to the extent that you?
Is it
you
on the
need for
card you
anything?
gave us?
It is, yep.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, you should have it. I mean, again, if you need anything from me over the next 2 months or so, I mean, as I said, I'm not going to take any direction from any one of you. Just, we know where that line is drawn. But I'm happy to talk through any of these issues if you have any, questions or.
See, what's hard for
comments.
me is I'm a little computer illiterate.
Okay.
I mean, I can do some things. I could do my football pools and this and that.
The important things.
But when it comes to pasting something this or scan something this off the, I mean, I gotta get help. I mean,
That's all
I
right.
gotta call my kids.
We won't have you. We
Or
won't have
even
you
the
scan
neighbor,
anything.
11-year-old neighbor boy I gotta call. He knows how to do
They're
it.
good,
It's
but they
just, I
don't
never grew up with this.
Right.
I'm retired now, so I don't work with this stuff every day, so it's a little harder to get up there for me, you know.
We'll try to make it as easy as we can.
Let me try to do something, see if it'll actually do it. If not, then I just need you guys to either come upstairs with me or,
Or if you have it ready, have it printed out for him where he can come and pick it up. Once he has it ready for review. I mean, I can review mine. But
Do
if
you
he
have
needs a
this
hard
that he
copy-
just passed on to us? Do you have that? Do you have
Yeah, I
this?
have it in my email.
Like I
That's the
said, I
one you
can-
sent to us?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can try and get it in mine.
You want a copy?
Are you sure you can?
I can just print it out again. Yeah, by all means.
Okay.
So I can have this one? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was my last copy, though, I think.
No, I have mine.
got
in
one?
email.
All right.
I'm good.
Yeah, no, I can print them out
I guess
again.
I keep doing this. It doesn't let me print it.
I don't need a printout.
Oh, okay. You don't either? Okay. And you both got a copy now? Okay. You did as well? You got a copy as well?
Yeah, you gave me.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can't get this machine to print.
all right, that was, again, unless you have any other questions, that was really all.
Like
I
a lot
kinda
of people
wanted
like to read all this stuff on a little bitty phone. I like to go on the laptop and
I
do
know.
it, not on that phone. I mean, my son, he just said, Dad, you could do it on your phone. I said, man, that's
That's
hard
kids for
seeing
you.
that on the phone.
It's true.
I'd rather do it on a
That's kids for you.
20-inch screen, you know?
They have 20/20 vision. That's kids for you.
They do this,
You ask,
this.
you ask them to show you something, they don't show it to you. They do it. Yeah. Oh, you
Yeah,
gonna?
I
Yeah,
got
for real. They do
I got
it.
the 12-year-old neighbor boy showing me how to do things.
They were
you
younger
know?
than that. Are you kidding?
hey, come over and fix
age,
my
yeah.
phone, you know? How do you get rid of this?
Okay.
Boom, they
You
do it,
guys-
you know?
You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you want to, are you?
So are we
you
gonna
want to
decide
adjourn?
on a date for January, or that's to be
It
determined?
would be, our January date would be the 30th of January, which is the last Monday of the month. And our elections will take place on March 14th.
What
Just
is
giving you a date, just, that was random, sorry.
That's good to know that the election, the special election would be in March 14th.
Well, that's our standard election.
Standard election, March 14th. Okay.
Yeah.
For what? For the commission?
For the commission, the 5
No.
positions are up. Yep. Yep, so qualifying is between January 3rd and January 6th, I believe it is.
So citizens will be voting in that election or just within house?
No, that's
No,
all
no,
the,
no.
all the
Residents
citizens.
are,
okay.
they'll come out to vote
Okay.
on March 14th.
14th. Okay.
So your next meeting will be January 30th.
Okay.
And again, we will be sending out as soon as our attorney has a draft. I'll go ahead
I'll
and
try
send it
by
out.
mid-month to get something in a form that it's ready for submittals. We have a couple weeks to look at it.
Okay.
So everybody's okay with that?
And like I said, if I
Yeah.
can't
I am.
print it out, I'll just
If you
call you
come
and come
by,
on there.
yes.
Because I'm just down the street. so.
If any of you at any time need a copy before the meeting, please give me a call. I'm happy to run you a copy.
Okay. Of the
Okay.
one for the.
For the
If I
next
can't get the
upcoming
neighbor boy
meeting.
over, I'll come and get him.
I have no problem with that. Anything else?
No,
Motion?
no. Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
All right, 7:16.